I told my husband I dropped my phone walking up their driveway and it kind of got some dirt on it. I said, I'm going to go in the bathroom. And I said, I'm just going to wipe my phone off and I'll be out in a minute. He said, I must have been gone maybe a half an hour. And so somebody comes and knocks on the door. Well, the door is locked. I had come into the bathroom and it's almost like it was an out of body experience. I can remember everything happening. My head was throbbing. I could hear a ringing, but it's not like I was a complete blackout, but it felt like it in my head. I dropped my phone when I walked in and I leaned over to pick it up and the momentum just carried me. And as I fell forward, I hit the wall and my bell was pretty rung, but I remember laying there on the floor and I couldn't move.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. This is episode 176 and my guest today is Kristi Schiller, the founder of the charity Canines for Cops, which is a charity that raises funds to donate canines to law enforcement agencies and school districts across the United States. Kristi went undiagnosed as having suffered a stroke for several months and wanted to join the podcast to raise awareness about stroke and the signs of stroke so that others could get help quicker. Kristi Schiller, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
Thank you for being here. Take two. Hopefully this time we'll get through it and actually have a proper recording at the end of it.
Yes, I know we tried a few days ago and I don't know what it is, something about, I don't know if it's Texas or, I don't know what it is, but our connections weren't loving each other, but I hope they're better today.
The internet connection isn't bigger in Texas. Everything else is big and good.
Everything.
Not the internet connection.
Well, I don't know if you saw in the news last winter, but Texas got all their electricity cut off.
Mm-hmm.
We had none for some people a few weeks. And so it was like everything's bigger in Texas, but the political brains and the electricity.
Hey, tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Well, let's see. My symptoms started maybe a solid 6 months before I was diagnosed, and maybe a year. I look back on it. I had some auditory issues, some severe ones, about 9 or so months before. Football games, things like that, any type of loud noises, breaks, cheering, anything would just feel like ice picks in my ear. And so I did get the shot in January, and I got my second Moderna shot in February. And I didn't have any complications, didn't think much about it. And I'm still not convinced that, it had anything to do with that because I was having issues before. Mm-hmm. But I started getting some severe headaches and just the short-term memory was it was horrible. In March of this year, I had a case of global transient amnesia. And I dropped my little girl off at school. I went to the grocery store and we live on a ranch in Texas. So it's nothing for me to have 2 or 3 carts. And as I'm ambling through the aisles, getting what I needed, everything, I'm kind of having to go to my phone saying, if I'm going to cook this, what do I need? Oh, butter. And then it would just, all the lights, everything hurt so bad. So I went over to the pharmacy. I got some Excedrin and just thought, oh, it's allergies. Well, by the time I got done and the checkout boy was helping me out, he said, where did you park? I said, I don't know. And the sun was hitting me as I came out. And he said, what do you drive? I said, I'm not really sure. Um, I just, and I'm trying not to embarrass myself in front of him. He's a young college kid. And so we finally figure out where my car is. And he says, I've never helped anybody with two carts before. And I said, I live on a ranch. And he said, oh, you do? Which direction is it? I didn't know there'd be a quiz. And I said, he goes, do you live towards Austin, towards Houston? And I said, I don't know. And it was as the sun was penetrating on me, it was, I had sunglasses on, but it was, the pain was just unreal.
Mm.
And I couldn't remember my husband's name. I couldn't remember my name. Um, I said, please don't go get a manager or call the police. I'm not on drugs. I don't think I need to be on drugs, but I'm just having these headaches. And because he looked pretty alarmed. And a lady was going by and she stopped me and she said, I went to a charity event. Now, she didn't know the episode I was having. I went to a charity event at your ranch. And because I have a charity, Canines for Cops in America. And she said, you have such a beautiful ranch. And I said, what direction was it?
Mm.
And about that time, my husband called. I couldn't have told you my husband's name. And it, it on the iPhone, it gives the name and the picture and then the title of the company, however you have it set up. And I told the boy, I said, look, this isn't that's my husband, I think. And I'm trying to make jokes as I'm going along. And I just feel like it's bright and it hurts, but yet everything's getting more narrow
Mm-hmm.
and darker. And and I said, look, it says he's the CEO of an oil company. I did pretty good, huh? And I'm trying to make the guy laugh. But the minute I hear my husband's voice, I start crying. And I said, I don't know where we live. And he said, what? I said, he said, where are you? And I told him, and he goes, I said, how do I get home? And he said, did you taste something in the store? That's when he hands you like a sample with some food. And I said, no. And he goes, well, you take a left out of that driveway and go 7 miles and you're in front of our ranch. I said, okay, I can't believe I drove myself home. Then the headache was just so omnipresent for about 48 hours. I went to the doctor and I said, look, I think I have a brain tumor. I mean, it's that serious. And he said, no, you don't. I said, could I have dementia? He said, no. So he pulled blood. He says, your blood is fine. It's probably just allergies. Okay. So a month later, we went to a friend's birthday party and we drove about an hour and a half, 2 hours to Austin. I remember getting there. We got there about 5:30 in the evening and he lived on a big lake. I don't remember anything after that. And actually, I had given up. I only have red wine, but I decided when these headaches started back in January, February, the Christmas time, I was going to give up red wine because I thought maybe it's the tannins, it's something that's causing these horrific headaches. And so I didn't have anything. And I said, he said I was just not making sense. Like 1 minute, and I was so thirsty. So he says, look, I made us a reservation and I have a girlfriend that's kind of a celebrity and interior designer. She was there and she said, I want to tag along. We went to this fancy steakhouse and we see our neighbor. I don't see him. I mean, apparently I did. And he's a politician here in Texas. And he said, he sent me a text. And my husband said, I just locked in and just kept looking at this text. And he says, oh, Kyle's here. So I don't remember any of this. The next morning, he starts referring to his daughter and says, Kyle's daughter's going to do so great in school and what a pretty girl. And I said, who? And he says the little girl's name. And I said, oh. And I said, why do you keep talking about them? I mean, they're lovely people, but you just keep bringing them up. And he said, we were with them for 3 hours last night. They ended up eating with us. And he said, so he took me back to the doctor. Doctor never said, let's get an MRI. Let's get a CAT scan. I can pull more blood, but I can tell you she's fine. Everything comes back fine. Pull more blood. Everything was fine. So about 2.5, 3 weeks goes by, and I have a appointment back in Austin at the governor's office for my charity. And right before I sat down, I said, is there somebody here who can give me an aspirin? It just, that morning when I got up, it was doing it again, the throbbing. And so as 8 or 10 people sat around this table and I got ready to speak, I couldn't remember the name of my charity. I couldn't remember what we did. I just said, I just need a minute. I think this is allergies. Well, again, called the doctor and he said, look, I mean, you were, the only thing I saw was your little low in vitamin D. Okay. So now that was May. Now we go into all the way to the end of June. The headaches were still kind of there, but I mean, I kind of learned to try to,
deal with it.
Deal with it. I mean, so we were at a friend's house for his birthday party and I kept dropping. I noticed after that time in May that I forgot about dinner to the governor's office so now it's about 8 weeks have gone by. I just dropped everything. And I go to put my hand in to like open up the car door and would miss the whole handle. And then I was like, whoa, how did I miss that? And in just everything that I got ready. And, I had cut back on added sugar. I'm like, okay, now's the time you're going to go gluten-free. I guess now's the time you're going to get healthy. You're going to do it. Gave up red wine. And I told my husband, I dropped my phone walking up their driveway and it kind of got some dirt on it. I said, I'm going to go in the bathroom. And I was feeling dizzy, but I didn't want to alarm him. And I said, I'm just going to wipe my phone off and I'll be out in a minute. Well, everybody, 20 people, they start mingling and get ready to sit down. He said I must have been gone maybe a half an hour. And so somebody comes and knocks on the door. Well, the door is locked. I had come into the bathroom and it's almost like it was an out-of-body experience. I can remember everything happening. My head was throbbing. I could hear a ringing, but it's not like I was a complete blackout, but it felt like it in my head. Yeah. Again, everything had gotten really narrow, but I could hear like people talking through the door on the other side. I can remember that. I dropped my phone when I walked in and I leaned over to pick it up and the momentum just carried me. And as I fell forward, I hit the wall, plaster, like Venetian plaster type wall. And my bell was pretty rung, but I remember laying there on the floor and I couldn't move. And I was like, I bet I jammed my neck. I've got a pinched nerve. That's what's wrong with me. But yet I still couldn't move when I was laying in the floor. A few minutes later, I hear it tap, tap, tap. And, we're ready to sit down for dinner. So I remember kind of sitting up and getting a washcloth and, and I'm like, my neck, God, it hurts so bad. And from my ear to, I guess, my collarbone, it just felt like I must have landed on it that way. Well, it proceeded to get a lot worse in the next few days. I switched pillows. Of course, WebMD is the death of all of us. We all go on and, everybody's dying.
Self-diagnose.
Exactly. So I went on and it matched everything to a pinched nerve. And I thought, that's what I did. I must have hit it So I start putting a heating pad, and then I start putting ice. And I call a neurosurgeon I know in Houston. And I said, look, I was afraid to kind of get out anywhere that, that you're going to catch COVID. Where you're just going to go to the emergency room and tell them that you don't feel good.
Yeah.
Are you going to wait with 30 really sick people? And this is how you get it. So it was July 12th. So June 29th was the night that I passed out on the floor. So it went all the way up until the night of July 11th. I was still having a hard time sleeping. And so my neurosurgeon in Houston said, I'll order more when you get here, but you have to come with an MRI as a baseline. I mean, I don't order that. I'm too high up on the totem pole, basically. I don't order all that. So you come and let me see a recent MRI, and then, we'll go from there. Like, okay. So I had some disc problems about 10 years ago in my lower back. So I thought, that's it. It's just moved up my neck. And this makes perfect sense. And now I talked myself into it. I was very hot that night, and I had the temperature, I'm embarrassed to say, I don't know what you do, what would it be over there, but 65 degrees Fahrenheit inside my house.
Was that was your heating? You had your heating on at 65?
No. I don't even own heating.
The air conditioning. You're in
Air conditioning.
65 Fahrenheit to Celsius is 18 degrees Celsius. So you had it on because you were trying to get cooler because your body felt hot.
Hot.
Okay.
And so I went to bed and I even called my female doctor, and she's a girlfriend. And I said, Cindy, my neck is just jammed and I'm so hot. And what can I take? I mean, as if I had anything. What can I do? And she goes, well, I hate to say it, and I don't want to poke because she and I are the same age. She said, but it could be like premenopause. Okay. Well, I guess that's it. And I have a jammed neck, and I have to find a different pillow. So I'm walking around with my ice pack, my heat pack, and I tried to get up at 1 o'clock that morning. Even though I was laying flat, I was so nauseous after I slept for 2 or 3 hours. And I felt like even in the dark, the room was spinning. So I put one foot on the ground to try to go to the bathroom. And I just knew I was going to. Maybe did I eat something? Still trying to piece it all together. Well, by 3 a.m., I said, I can't stand this. The nausea is just too bad. So I got up and went into the refrigerator, and I remembered I had a cold pack, like for springs, or if somebody falls down, wrap it around your, joint or leg or whatever. So I went to the freezer, and when I opened it up, everything was dark in my kitchen. And when that light hit me in the eyes, everything just started to exacerbate and get much more narrow. And that's the last thing I remember when I went down. And so I had my hands trying to steady myself on the glass shelf in the freezer. And so when I fell back, I pulled it and it all came out. And so it made a loud noise. So it wakes my husband up. So he comes in and he says, I see 1 foot sticking out behind the island, and I'm calling your name. And he said, you had 2 half gallons of ice cream that have fallen out by your head. And he's like, honey, do you want some ice cream? And he said, you just started seizing, that everything was, and he got over me to help me. And I was like, you're sitting on my chest. I can't breathe. He's like, I'm not touching you. I'm trying to help you. And everything just felt like it was getting smaller and tighter. And we still didn't go to the hospital. because I'm like, whatever it is, these allergies, or maybe she says it could be premenopause. It didn't seem worthy enough to me. I don't know. I know it sounds crazy looking back on it, but a friend of my husband's is the orthopedic surgeon for Texas A&M University. So he's telling him about these crazy episodes. And he said, you know what? Just what are y'all doing tomorrow? We open like at 8:30 in the morning, but come over an hour before. No one's going to be there, just me, and I'll have a tech come in, and I'll run her through the MRI machine at my office, and then you can take that to your doctor. Wow, gosh, it sounds like heaven. Great. Well, as I was trying to get dressed after about 30 minutes of being in the machine, I noticed I kept missing my buttons. I was by myself and I couldn't quite get it in the hole. Well, when I finally got it in, I was 3 buttons off. Like nothing was lining up. I remember there was a tap on the door, and it was my husband and Dr. Brimhall. And my husband's like, you need to sit down. I said, okay. He said, you've had and then the doctor said, you've had massive strokes. He said, and what you're feeling is all in your carotid artery. I said, wow. Well, I found out that I think there was 5 of them, but they only count for 1 stroke they're in the same artery. So we said, we're driving to Houston. So it's about an hour, 10 minutes. So we drive into the medical center and I wait, and it takes them about 11 and a half hours to get me into someplace, a neurological spot there. And so they start running tests. I guess I'm in there a week or so. They can see the strokes, arteries. There's no black plaque. There's no buildup. There's no clots. It's they were ischemic strokes. Ischemic, yes. And they said, but we don't see a bleed. So they ran more tests, more CAT scans, MRIs, spinal taps. I mean, you name it, they ran it. So I have the most amazing vascular neurologist, and her name is Dr. Tanu Garg. And I was put with her, and I was put with a heart doctor. They did find a PFO, which is a hole in the heart that I'd had since I was born. She said, this has to be what it is, because that's the only thing that's left. Well, they did some more tests, and they did a little implant on my chest that it's not a pacemaker. It just sends a note somewhere and lets them know if there's any arrhythmia, and I don't know if it's India or Indiana. I can't remember. And so it lets them know if there's any, arrhythmia or anything like that. And so she's like, I just feel like there's something else. I'm not sure what. Well, so I went back after I was released from the hospital. I went back for some more meetings, and I met with her and the department head. And then they did some tests, and I came back 10 days later. I remembered my vascular neurosurgeon, but I looked at the department head and I said, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I can only imagine how busy you are. I said, your office is lovely. She kind of looked at me, and my husband said, well, you remember Dr. Jones? I said, I'm so sorry. I said, did I meet you in the hospital? He said, you spent 2 hours with her less than a week and a half ago here in this office. I said, I've never been in this office. And so the short term has really given me a hard time. So she looks at me that day and she said, I think you've had another stroke. I said, how can you tell? And she said, I just want to go and have another MRI. Well, in Houston being the third largest city, by the time they order one in the medical center, it's considered speedy if you can get it in 10 days. I mean, it's just such a big place. And I went and they lined me up for another one. And I came back a few days later, early in the morning, and the stroke had moved to my brainstem, or not moved, but another stroke, a pons, right on the brainstem. And again, they put me back in the hospital, ran more tests, another series of everything, and still can't find anything. So I said, $1.5 million worth of tests later, it's a 2-cent baby aspirin. I feel like it keeps me alive every day.
Wow.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
So, in this whole time, do you think you were going to the doctor and giving them the wrong information? Of course, you weren't telling them that you're having a stroke. You didn't know that much, but were you underplaying what was happening to you, therefore maybe unintentionally misleading them and then making it harder for them to know what was going on with you?
No. Because I was coming back, I came back 3 times in 4 or 5 months for the same thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a
it
bit.
was just how much blood can you pull? And of course that didn't show anything.
Yeah.
Except a healthy girl.
Yeah. And that's the problem when you diagnose somebody by the way they look on the outside. And I suppose when you're at the doctor's appointment, your amnesia is not there. Everything is okay most of the time. Is that right?
No, well, the short term was affected. The what they diagnosed as the amnesia. That's usually about or a little episode usually that affects someone 2 to maybe 5 hours. So it's rare, they say, to have it more than maybe 2 or 3 times. So again, I just thought it's my short-term memory. So I started loading up on vitamins.
Yeah,
thinking,
you do what you can and you make decisions and you look at the internet and you try and solve your own problem. And COVID is a real issue because a lot of people are not going to the hospitals and not getting serious help when they need it because they're afraid of COVID, or there's an over demand for hospital beds or whatever. And people are going, well, it's not that important. I haven't got COVID, or probably don't have COVID.
Right. And I mean, I live in the middle, isolated on a ranch. And so I just thought, well, as long as I'm out here, I'm safe. And I mean, I dreaded just going to see my regular doctor. And, there wasn't, and I came straight from the parking lot and went straight, like I waited. And I just kept thinking, I just don't want to catch COVID. And that was the whole reason when someone said, why didn't you go to the hospital right away? Well, and when maybe let's say I test negative for COVID, they're going to say, we have a lot of really sick people here. We're going to have to put you over here and we'll get to you when we can get to you.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't want to be put in that position.
Yeah. How would you know? You don't know. So how are you going through life and managing your life? So you got a girl, you got a little daughter, and how are you getting through that because I imagine with these episodes that you're having, you're involved, your daughter's around, like that's happening with her around, and how's she managing it? What is she feeling?
Um, well, she is 15 and a half. And so she, in America, we get our driver's license, well, at least in Texas, when you're 16. So the doctor wrote her a letter that she could get hers early. So she's like, sorry, you had to take one for the team, Mom, but I get my driver's license early. There's that. I've had a few bouts with just seizures. I guess maybe, I've probably had maybe a half a dozen, and I had never had that before prior to this. And, it's just, you kind of just don't know when it's coming on. And they are not like a grand mal, but almost everything you're hearing sounds like it's at kind of at a distance. And then I know that wherever I am, I need to, even if I'm sitting down, I need to lay flat because it's about to happen.
Do you talk about it so matter of fact? Is it concerning? Is there any fear there? Like, what's going on for you though?
Of course. I mean, I'm petrified. I mean, I feel like I'm not even middle age yet. So, you have so much life left to live. And, I'm not really supposed to, they stopped my ability to drive. Now my ranch is big enough that I'll putz around and get in my car and go to different parts of it. And every now and then if I need something that's close by the grocery store, whatever, I'll sneak to town. But yet my family has an app. It's like, it's kind of like being under house arrest. Ding, ding, ding. She left the ranch. And where are you? And they'll, you need to come back home. I'm like, okay.
Are you consenting to that, or are they doing that under duress?
Yes. I mean, no, I'm consenting to it, but it's just, I would never say why me. Because I was in broadcasting for years. I started a charity that is now global. And so maybe a higher being or something in this world decided, you know what? If this is going to happen to someone, I'm going to give it to her because she can be a voice. We just have to find out what it is I'm going to be a voice for. But I just feel that I've been able to reach out to other people, like in Facebook groups that are kind of, younger or just going through similar symptoms. I'll go on to say, does anybody else, what happens when you experience these seizures? Do you feel nausea afterwards? Is your head hurting? How long should I go, with my head hurting like this? What's not normal? Because none of it's normal, but has anybody else experienced that? And I've really met some really interesting people. And for the longest time, I was really embarrassed that I didn't know that this is what was happening to me. And they were like, how could you not? Well, I went to a doctor and they didn't know. And they sent me back home and agreed, maybe it was allergies. I called my gynecologist. She's like, well, you seem fine. But when it would happen, it was severe. And so, I just, I keep trying to find the positive. Maybe this has happened to me because vocally I can handle it. I don't know. I am just trying to find the positive in it every day.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to do. What I think doing that does help to focus the mind, because there's a lot of things that we can worry about after these types of situations, and that doesn't make it better. That makes it worse, because emotionally and mentally, that impacts your physiological state. So it's definitely better to look for the silver lining if there is one. And it may be hard to find, but at least you're focusing on trying to find it. And if it does pop up, you'll see it. You'll go, wow, okay, that's what it's about for me. And it might take a while. And some people that are going through the hard times, they are struggling with that. They're focusing on why me. They're focusing on this shouldn't be happening to me, or what did I do to deserve this, all that kind of stuff. You're born, you're alive. That's all you did. And that's part of being alive. You have to go through shit sometimes. And unfortunately, sometimes the shit's not pleasant, and it hangs around for longer than you wanted to. So you just have to look for the silver lining. And kind of that was for me what kept me going. I had 3 brain hemorrhages over 3 years and then brain surgery. And for me, it was the whole exact same thing. It's like, what can I do that's going to make it better? How can I support myself? How can I get through this? What can I learn from this? And that made it so that I didn't focus on, I wonder if I'm going to have another one, and when will the next one be, and all that kind of stuff. And I prepared, I love this saying. I'm not sure exactly who says it, but it's like, expect the best and prepare for the worst.
Yes, absolutely.
It-
And, I say, if it's my time, it's my time. I don't want it to be my time, but I'm definitely going to use, and it's been a wake-up call. Again, they haven't figured out what's causing this, but it's definitely been a wake-up call that if somebody means something to you, call them or go see them, and tell people how you feel, or if there's something that you want to do it.
Yeah.
Because this is not a dress rehearsal.
No.
I mean, we're here. And I still keep thinking that, after my second lumbar puncture, I was like, there's got to be a reason that, I've got the best doctors in the world. And if, all these surgeons standing around, a half a dozen of them are still scratching their head, when it happens, I don't know if it's just going to be, wow, we didn't think of that. Or I have been tested for MS, for lupus, JAK2, Lyme disease, moya. The list is just so long. And, for brain cancer, for tumors, and I'm having another PET scan in a few days. It's just that many experts and that many pieces of fine equipment, whatever it is that they use, can't all come back scratching their head.
At some point, there'll be an outcome. You seem to take it all in your stride, though. Like, is this how you always are? Are you just cool, calm, and collected? Because this is really okay. So it's just a facade.
Well, no, I'm pragmatic, but at the same time, if we don't know what it is, I don't know what it is I'm going to whine about.
Yeah. Cool. Right.
If it were just said, look, you have, a tumor in your brain and we didn't see it and it's pressing. I'm like, okay, at least now at this point, we could go somewhere with it and say, okay, who is the best at what? And we just can't get that far. And like I said, it's been almost 9-10 months. And we don't know what it is. So I don't know what I have to whine about. If I don't know what it is, I can't really bitch about it.
Yeah. Is it a little bit of control what you can and let go of what you can't type thing?
Absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, all of a sudden you wake up and you say, I'm not the center of the universe. Shocker, but I'm not. And in fairness, as Dr. Gard told me in the beginning, I was panicking. I was having panic attacks.
Mm,
And every time I start to stutter or something like that, that I'm like, okay, is it coming? Then you start anticipating it.
mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'm throwing, and I bet I text her more a week than I do my husband. And I'm like, hey, have we thought about this? I just saw this. And she's like, take it off the WebMD. Yes, we tested for that. Okay. Well, have we thought about having my water tested? She goes, how long have you been drinking that water? And I was like, 15 years at this ranch. She's like, it's not the water. Okay. I mean, but you can spend your whole life.
Yeah.
That can be your job.
Mm,
I kind of rather that, I started journaling on a lot, really, and I had to, because if not, I'd forget certain things. And so before I was even diagnosed, my short term was so bad. So if you and I were sitting down having dinner and you proceeded to tell me a story about what happened to you, and maybe you didn't know that I was sick, I'd say, do you mind? And I take out my little pad and I start taking shorthand while you're talking, because that's how fast my memory could leave me.
mm.
And so, I would just start the bullet points of what somebody was saying. So I could be sitting at a dining table with 10 or 12 people. I'd pull out my little pad. And I remember I did it one time. I didn't explain it to someone. They said, are we boring you? And I said, no. So then I explained the whole thing and they felt bad. I get to where water, I say, I'm going to drink a gallon of water a day. I try to every day when I start out. That's my goal. I don't actually ever hit it because water's pretty boring.
Yeah, and that's a lot of
And
water.
so that's a lot of water.
Mm.
But I'm thinking if I can just flush out of my system. I mean, we wear sunscreen as a preventative. Think about it. The things that we do, we brush our teeth with fluoride as a preventative. You may or may not take a flu shot or a COVID shot to protect us. And, sometimes I feel like I'm swinging without a net. What am I doing wrong? They tell me nothing, but what am I doing that's not protecting myself?
I agree with them that you aren't doing anything wrong, and what you're doing is trying to solve a problem that it maybe is not in your hands to solve, but you're going about it the right way. I think you're going, okay, so what can I control? What can I do? And if I'm not doing anything, if drinking a gallon of water is okay, at least I'm not drinking a gallon of wine. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
I actually don't miss the wine.
yeah, you're doing something and you're not making it worse. And that is a really good thing. And same with me. I was out to dinner last night with some friends, and that we've known each other for 2.5, 3 years. And still every time we go to dinner, they ask me about, we're going to grab a wine. Do you want one? And every time I say no, I don't drink anymore and I can't drink. And we go through this whole thing every single time. And basically what I haven't said to them is I'm doing the things that I can do that doesn't make my situation worse. I've never explained it like that to them. And that's what I'm doing. And drinking wine, I enjoyed, and I love the taste of wine, and I love the way it makes you feel during a meal, but I don't like what it does to me post-stroke and how it makes me feel. It makes me feel like I'm having another stroke. And if I'm gonna have a wine and I'm gonna think about the possibility of having another stroke, or it's going to bring up a trauma from my previous 3 episodes, so that takes the fun out of it. Like, there's no point.
Right. Because now you're focused on that wine.
Yeah, and I'm creating that anxiety, which makes everything worse. And there's no need to go down that path. So I love what you're doing. You're taking matters into your own hands in the areas that you can control. They're minor, but they're really major in how they make you feel emotionally and how they make you feel some control in the situation. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I try to cut out, I say cut out. I don't know if anybody's capable of cutting out sugar because it's in so much. But it was a wake-up call, like the added sugar. I was never a soft drink drinker. But just sugar is in everything. And so that gave me anxiety. My doctor's like, okay, added sugar. Let's just don't do this overnight because you're going to drive yourself, to a point of anxiety that you can't come back from. She said, but try to watch. Don't add any extra to it. Just try to awareness. And I want to say that I read something like the average American has like an extra 18 pounds of sugar a year. And it's something that I never would have guessed that. Yeah. And it's trying to get enough sleep. My sleep, it's been very, very hard for me to fall asleep. And then you kind of feel just so lethargic in the morning. And, it's the anxiety. I wouldn't say it's so much and I have little bouts of, I'll go ahead and say it, I have little bouts of anger. Like if somebody says, oh, let me do that for you. Okay, I'm not an invalid. And then I wonder, how do other people look at me now? That have to be around me all the time. I don't think people think twice about it. They don't know me.
No.
But I was having these little fits of just pissed off. And I didn't know what I was mad at. And so I went back and I said, look, I don't want to seem ungrateful. And I told my doctor, I said, I'm just having these fits that I don't know what I'm mad at, but it's like everything irritates me. She said, that's part of the stroke.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. So that part, wait, I'm normal. She goes, well, in that sense that you've had a stroke, that part of it is normal. And in certain days, like I made sure today that I went to bed early last night. And by the time you and I were going to meet today, that I had lots of rest, because after a certain time of the day, if you didn't know me, you'd think she's been sitting at the country club day drinking. My words will start to come out. And if I say, I need a glass of water, it will be dry water. In other words, it's what I'm feeling, and maybe the words are jumbled. And I was at a salon after I got out of the hospital a few weeks ago, and there was a woman next to me, and underneath my sweater, I had my hospital band, and I didn't want to take it off right there, and I pulled it down, and I have a big clear water jug thing with me, and I had put some of the flavored sugar-free, berry or whatever is in there, and so it kind of looked pink. And I was having a hard time explaining to the person cutting my hair. And I see this woman looking at me, and I could feel her looking, and I could see her in the mirror. And I would try to drink more. I thought, okay, more hydrated, because that's what's happening. And then I saw her kind of roll her eyes. I was like, bitch, I had a stroke. She's like, and I'm like, I don't know where that came from. And she goes, oh, I wasn't judging. And I go, yeah, you were. You thought I was drunk.
She thought you were drinking rosé.
Yeah, she thought I was drinking rosé. And she goes, well, that's what it looked like. And I was like, well, just goes to show you that looks can be, it's not everything you think it is.
Yeah, look.
And then she and I got a good laugh out of it. But I saw her looking hard at me for maybe 15 minutes. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
The internal anxiety is so bad.
Yeah. people who haven't been what we've been through judge, and that's okay, because they're ignorant. They don't know any better. And that's me. That's who I was. That's what I was like before this. So at the moment, it's like, oh, okay, you're just like me before anything bad happened to you. So, all right, I get it. No worries. Please stay that way. Stay ignorant. That's better for you and your health long term. And it's a shit way to find out what it's like to be a stroke survivor, is to have one. That's the only way. And you don't want to know that way. You'd rather not know. My biggest issue is that nobody understands what I'm going through other than stroke survivors. And they really don't. And that was frustrating me at some point, because I couldn't explain my needs. But then I realized that I would never want them to know what I'm going through, because there's only one way for them to really know. It's like, forget about it. I'll just educate them when the time arises, and I won't judge them back for being judgmental to me. I'll just go, all right, let me explain something to you. And then we'll bring everybody together on the same page so that I can stand. And then maybe next time they see somebody who's struggling, and they won't automatically assume that the person's drunk. They might go, hey, do you need a hand? Because often we even get judged as stroke survivors going to hospital. I have heard so many stories where a stroke survivor will go to a hospital with symptoms of a stroke on a Friday or a Saturday night, and the hospital goes, wow, I mean, here's another drunk guy, another drunk gal. They've just come out from being out on the town. Just put them in the corner and make them wait. And it's like, oh, that's rough, So
I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah,
on here.
Yeah.
Wait, can you see that?
The photo of your brain there, and then there's there's a white spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was one of the larger ones. And I have to tell you, for when she first pulled that up and I saw that, it seemed like my whole life froze for those 10 seconds, because I thought maybe it's brain cancer. I mean, I didn't know. And I felt almost relieved when they said, you've had strokes. I was like, okay. I mean, I hate to be that way, but
No,
I'm not taking the strokes lightly.
No.
But I was so relieved. And I can just remember crying, thinking, so it's not brain cancer? And she said, because I was having such a hard time processing everything. And she said, no. She said, but she immediately said, we know it's the hole in your heart. Well, so then by the time they did some more tests, and the cardio surgeon came back and said, I can repair the hole in your heart. It will only prevent the strokes 2 to 4%.
Yeah.
Well, then why bother?
Yeah, I've heard that before for a lot of people, that sometimes they avoid surgery. And I'm not a doctor or an expert, but sometimes I understand why it's okay to, if you're going to do it, to leave it for a little while and manage it with medication, because you're under duress already. There's a heart surgery maybe that's going to happen. Maybe the doctors have got a good plan about that, and it's something that you can settle in the future. This happened to you, it's very fresh and very early. You immediately wanted to come on and share. You said you wanted to raise awareness. Like, who do you hope is listening to this that are going to go, oh, okay, I should pay attention to Kristi?
Well, between all my avenues on social media, I have about 1 million followers, and I'm going to make sure everybody that is out there gets a copy of this. I mean, because if it can happen to somebody that was my age, I've never had a cigarette in my life. I've never had a beer in my life. I mean, yeah, Joe, I like sweets, but I'm not sure cheesecake will kill you. I mean, I guess you have enough of it. But, I was trying to think of like vices and things like that. I mean, I couldn't think of any enough. And then you beat yourself up that, am I just that damn dumb that I didn't see it? And when somebody goes, and you didn't go to the hospital? Well, yeah, hindsight's 2020. I wish I would known exactly, but as far as I'm concerned, I thought, okay. And then I talked, one of my dear friends suffers from migraines, and she has since she was young. And she's like, and I was like, I almost want to throw up. It hurts so bad. She goes, yep, migraine. Well, in a way it was, but that was a byproduct of what was happening. So I just counted it as migraine.
And if you had known somebody that had a stroke beforehand, you might have thought, okay, I wonder if it's a stroke. But you never knew
Absolutely.
anybody that had a stroke before. And if you had,
No.
you never had a deep conversation with them to find out what it was
No,
like.
I mean, I have, like, my grandmother died of a stroke when I was like 4. I mean, I expected somebody very elderly and that
Yeah.
maybe had other pending issues. I really didn't think about, like I said, I didn't know anybody, or if I did, I wasn't aware that they had. But I still get a little tongue-tied trying to get it out. But you want people to be aware. What if I had caught this earlier? What if I had gone in and said, I'm insistent. Of course, I didn't know about vascular neurologists. I probably wouldn't have gone, to directly to a specialist, but at least would have gone somewhere. I would have demanded a CAT or an MRI and said, I really think that there's something more. And so when they were like, you're healthy, your blood is complete. Now my blood pressure was very low. I've always had very low blood pressure. And as I said, but it's low, that's good, right? And, my neurologist said, when you're low like that, it's just as bad as when you have high, because it's fighting just as hard to try to, keep up. So if I would have looked at those signs and then never having migraines, and then all of a sudden loss of words, the short-term memory is what scared me the most. And my rock in my foundation, her name is Kristen, would call and tell me something. And she's in a few hours later, she'd say, are you going to send me that? And I was like, send you what? She goes, we just talked about it. And I have to go through my phone and say, we had a 45-minute conversation about something. And then I thought, okay. And I was convinced, like, maybe I had dementia. And my doctor said it doesn't happen that way. And he, that kind of that look when they're idiot.
You've been on,
when they're
the internet
pushing
again.
you away.
Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah, when they look at you and it's like, you've been on the internet again, Kristi.
Right.
Stay off.
And you don't catch dementia or, whatever it is that, it doesn't happen that fast.
Apologies for the abrupt ending to the show. This interview was plagued by technological problems and the internet connection was sketchy at best. It was our second attempt at recording, so we just called it a day at the end of the second loss of signal. Now, regardless of the ending, I do hope you enjoyed the show, and I would really appreciate it if you could leave the show a review, as it encourages search engines to rank the show higher in the search results, making it possible for recent stroke survivors and their caregivers to find other people that have already been through what they are going through right now, and that might make their stroke recovery that little bit better. Thanks again for being here, and see you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamas. The The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.